If you have your Bibles and you'd like to read along, I'm reading from the book of Luke, chapter 12. We're going to begin reading with verse 13 and read through verse 21. This is in the New American Standard, although I see you have it on the screen. So let's read that together. How's that? Let's begin. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide my inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich toward God." Let's pray. Father, I thank you for your word. Thank you that it is truth. Whether we like it or not, it's truth. And so, Lord, would you take the word today and apply it to the need of each of our hearts, that we might, through this time, become more like Jesus. Thank you for what you're going to teach us today. We give you thanks in Christ's name. Amen.
No, that's not important. That's just messy.
Have you ever noticed how almost everything you buy these days has a warning label on it? Welcome to the world of protection from litigation. Some of the wackiest ones I've seen include this: a bottle of sleeping pills with the warning, "Caution, may cause drowsiness." Or the fishing lure with the warning, "Harmful if swallowed." A washing machine with the instructions, "Do not put people inside." Now, I know we've offered to do that with our kids a few times. When they don't do it. I actually saw this one a few years ago. My wife and I were up in Sears, and we were looking at power push mowers, and they were selling these, and a warning label on the push-behind mower said, "Not to be used to trim bushes." Now, I remember asking the salesman, you remember he asking him this? I said, "Do people really do this kind of stuff?" He says, "Yeah, you'd be surprised." And that's why they have to put a disclaimer, warning label on this just in case. So I thought I'd put this warning label up for you.
I'm sorry.
Now, having seen that, it caused me to think about some appropriate warning labels for worship that maybe we should have printed in your bulletin. Sleep at your own risk. Caution. Sermon contents may be too hot to handle. Or my personal favorite, not responsible for insults taken personally because of the Holy Spirit working through the message. Suck it up, Buttercup. Jesus offered some pretty stern warnings. If you look in your book, in Matthew chapter 6 and verse 1, he says, be careful about worshiping for show. There are people who do that. In Matthew chapter 18, Jesus says, see that you don't look down on little ones. Don't look down on the kids. They're special. And here in Luke chapter 12, Jesus begins the parable of the foolish farmer with these words. He says, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. This is very countercultural for us. That's what I want us to think about today. How do we handle all the stuff we have? You have it, I have it, much more than we could ever use or really need. Lots of stuff. Let's just begin with a confession. Possessions have their appeal. They do. Possessions have their appeal. Can we all agree on that? We like stuff. We like our stuff. Hey, you can get rid of the other guy's stuff, but I want my stuff. We collect stuff. We buy stuff. And then we buy more stuff. We get toys. And the biggest toy, which some of you could probably not live without, is this one. The fun of shopping is a way of life to many people. And a lot of people these days do it right here. But what would you do without texting? What would you do without Facebooking? What would you do without, God help us, Twitter? Once a convenience, now a necessity of life. Once in a while, we do use these little things here to talk about. I've actually seen people do that. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And so we need to be careful about that. We don't buy a lot of stuff on vacation, to be honest with you. We save that for places like this. Ollie's. Or we love this place. The one true dollar store. Just a couple of examples of the way we accumulate stuff. And most of the time, we don't even think about it. Let's face it, possessions kind of give us a rush when we get stuff. A feeling of status. In verse 6 we read these words, "And Jesus told them this parable, the ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop." Now what does that mean? That means that if it produced a good crop, this man was going to have some money. He was going to be wealthy. Let me see if I can just work this up for you. I want to play something for you here if I can make it work. And if you know this...
People, I realize, of course, it's no shame to be poor, but it's no rate honor either. So what would have been so terrible if I had a small fortune? If I were a rich man, if I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. If I were rich, I don't.
You remember definitely, right? Yeah. That great musical Fiddler on the Roof. He's trying to raise 5 daughters in a declining, changing society. And he says to the Lord, I realize it's no shame to be poor, but it's no honor either. So what would have been so terrible if, and then that was supposed to be the full musical clip, but somehow I didn't get it to work quite right. So he says, after all, if I were a rich man, I'd build a big tall house with rooms by the dozen, right in the middle of the town. There would be one long staircase just going up and another one even longer coming down. And one more thing, going nowhere, just for show. If I were a rich man, there would be chickens and turkeys and geese and ducks in the yard. Everybody who passed by would say, he's a wealthy man. Now, I suspect there's just a little bit of Teddy in all of us. Maybe the chickens and the turkeys might have been replaced by SUVs or Lexuses or something. But we like stuff, don't we? We like to collect stuff. It makes the economy go, and to some degree it makes us go. The fact is, possessions do have the appeal of success. With more grain and bigger barns in which to store it, this obviously savvy farmer was honest, he was hardworking, he was industrious. Is it wrong to be rich? No, not at all. And I think the church needs to repent of its prejudice against rich people while using them to fund their good deeds. A lot of times we've done that. And that kind of hypocrisy certainly gains the continued condemnation of Jesus. Jesus never condemned rich people. During the Wesleyan revival in England, that was 250 years ago, and Wesley noted that his converts often grew in wealth some near 100%. They just made a lot of money. And that's a pretty good return even on today's stock market, right? When people stop drinking and stop carousing and stop doing all the stuff that they did with that money that was useless to them, and they started making real money after that, really making money. Clean living can do that for you. I can't imagine what people pay for cigarettes these days. No matter how you feel about it, they're expensive. I've had people come to me lots of times and say, Pastor, can a guy go to heaven and smoke? I say, yeah. Oh, yeah, he can go to heaven and smoke. And the more he smokes, the faster he'll get there. But you spend a lot of money on that kind of stuff. And these people in Wesley's day found out that they really began to make some money. And Wesley started preaching this very principle. He said, earn all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. And that was his philosophy of life. When he began ministry back in the 1730s, he began with 30 pounds a year. Now that doesn't sound like much money. That would be in our economy about $90 a year. When he ended his career of preaching, he was still living on 30 pounds a year. He gave everything else away. And so we come to this parable of a farmer who Jesus calls a fool. Not a bad guy, just stupid. Okay, just stupid. As Forrest Gump so aptly said, stupid is as stupid does. You've seen the movie. Jesus said, be careful, watch out, be alert, learn the lesson of this very successful man. Now, you need to understand this. There is a huge difference between who you are and what you have. Some people think they're made by what they have. They are what they have. No, no, no. Jesus is very clear on this. There's a huge difference between who you are and what you have. And if you don't know the difference, then I think your soul is in jeopardy. It's a very bad thing. So let's start out with what is the problem with these things anyway? Watch out, Jesus says. Be on guard. What you have does not define who you are. Did you know families fight over possessions? My father died in 2015. We buried him the very same day we went to his house, right after that. And I have two sisters and a brother. My brother and I said all the stuff in the house. We don't care. My sisters were there. I want that. I want this. I want that. We walked in the living room. My mother had this beautiful glass-topped coffee table. My one sister wanted it. My other sister wanted it. I said, no problem. So I went out. I said, listen, I'll go out to the car, get the chainsaw. We'll split that baby in half. You could each have a half. Oh, no, we wouldn't do that. And so one of them ended up finding it. I don't know who it was. But they fought over stuff like that. And I've seen this in so many families. And it usually happens that when somebody dies, the rats come out of the woodwork. They want stuff that they never cared about before. Suddenly they want it. I've never been able to understand that. But that's the way some people are. Did you see how this whole discussion got started? Look in your books. Chapter 12, verse 1. Jesus is speaking to a crowd of probably thousands of people, so packed that the people were trampling one another, the Bible says. Kind of like Times Square at New Year's Eve. Or crowds waiting to get into a store on Black Friday. I don't know. Lots of people. And the verse 13 says, someone in the crowd said to Jesus, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Wow. Did you hear this? There's at least one in every crowd. You know that, don't you? Maybe somebody here is having problems over an inheritance. It happens. You who have never known such family turmoil, have mercy on the rest of us. You see, families fight, and whether these feuds involve the Pritzkers, who used to own Hyatt hotels, I don't know whether they still do or not, or maybe it's the Larsons who have hardly any wealth. Those kinds of conflicts are messy, they're costly, they're painful, and Jesus said, listen folks, you be careful, you be on the alert, be careful about the stuff you own because your life doesn't consist of what you own. Often it's just fodder for family fights. Be careful about the stuff you own because you're never going to have enough of it. The more you get, the more you want. Possessions are a problem. Possessions are a problem because you never have enough of them. Verse 18 says, I'll tear down my barns, I'll build bigger ones. When is enough enough? When is enough enough? A famous rich man, I think it was one of the Carnegies who was asked that question. He said, $1 more. What is enough? $1 more. It's always a little more than what you had, regardless of what you have. It's always more. I read not too long ago that one of the idiosyncrasies, I found this amazing. An idiosyncrasy, that's kind of a lyricism, kind of a thing particularly peculiar to our nation. One of the things that's odd about America is our storage sheds. Have you ever noticed they grow up like weeds? They're everywhere. These long lines of storage sheds, 12, 15, 24, little garages, all back to back. There's hundreds of them in this country. And that's kind of weird, just to our country. You know, you go out to them, you rent one for a few dollars a month, you put your extra stuff in it, which, by the way, you'll soon forget is in there. And we have those extra places of storage all over the place. Why? Because we have so much stuff. We are among, in my reading we found this, are among the few nations in the whole world who need that extra storage. Nobody else has that. I heard about this American businessman on vacation who encountered a fisherman near a Mexican resort. And he was napping on his boat, and the businessman came up to him and said, "Why aren't you fishing? Here's your boat. Why aren't you fishing?" He said, "Well, I was out this morning. I caught all I needed for my family." But the businessman said, "You know, if you went out twice a day, you'd catch enough fish to sell a few. And before long, you make enough money to buy several boats. And with a little luck, you could start a fresh seafood business and start shipping fish all over the United States. What would I do then?" asked the fisherman. Well, the businessman said, "You'd make millions. Then you could retire, get a nice place on the beach, gaze at the sun, look into the beautiful ocean," to which the fisherman replied, "What do you think I'm doing now?" Possessions are a problem. They're a problem. You never have enough of them. And they're a problem. They won't give you life. Verse 20 says, "This very night, your life will be demanded from you." That's pretty sobering stuff, isn't it? Did the stress of work kill this foolish farmer? Who knows? But of this I'm certain, the folly which drives people to burn themselves out for things has taken its toll on a lot of people. They have literally killed themselves to have more stuff. Some of you may remember Tennessee Williams, cat on a hot tin roof, a big guy by the name of Big Daddy. Anybody remember this? Yeah, I'm probably too old. Big Daddy. Big Daddy and his estranged son Brick are wading through all the paintings and all the sculptures and all the scores of boxes in the basement, which Big Daddy picks up when he picks up the clock, and he says, "There's one thing you cannot buy in a fire sale or any other market on earth. That's your life. You can't buy back your life when it's finished." We ought to know that. It's important that we know that. You cannot buy back life. I don't care how many possessions you have, you cannot do it. Another problem with possessions is you can't take them with you. The final question in this parable of the foolish farmer is the most poignant of all. Verse 20 says, Then who will get what you prepared? You've done all this work, you've got all these barns, you got all this grain. Now when you are gone, who's going to take care of this stuff? Who gets this? And it was Jesus who asked that question. One of these days, you and I are going to die. One of these days, you and I are going to die. I'm sure of that. Somebody will probably publish our obituary in the local paper, whatever that is, back in the back next to the want ads. And if we're lucky, a few people might get together for a memorial service. And then some minister reminding folks that we're nothing more than dust will throw our ashes to the wind, or give our remains to the worms and say, dust to dust and ashes to ashes, and then walking away from that committal service, somebody will think, if not actually ask, I wonder how much they've left. And the answer to that question is going to be very simple. They've left it all. They've left it all. That's how much I'll leave. Now, somewhere in the shadows, I can can almost hear Jesus saying to us today, watch out. Beware. Stay alert. Don't make a fool of yourself. Separate who you are from what you have. Declare to your stuff, even today, when you go back home, all of this stuff that you haven't used in 5 years. And by the way, most people tell you that if you haven't used something in 5 years, get rid of it. You aren't going to use it. Declare to your stuff, you are not my life. You must never own me. And you will never be my God. And I will never be your slave. That's what Jesus would tell all of us today. I believe. Maybe somebody here needs to be set free today. Set free from the stuff of your life. May God help it happen even now. And in so doing, God will give you peace. I believe that. God will give you peace. The peace that passes all understanding, because you've broken that connection between what you have and who you are. That's what I believe He wants from us. Let's pray. Father, thank you for these words from your word. Lord, would you help us to become more like Jesus? He was never known for stuff. Help us to appreciate what we have, to get rid of what we don't need, to share it, to bless somebody else maybe with something that we never use. Just make that happen. But may we never be caught up in the stuff. Make that so in each of our lives today. And we'll say thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand. We're going to sing a couple closing songs.